Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. Alone, Season 11, Episode 3. This was the food episode, it seems like. There was just a lot of food around. People caught some huge... Someone caught a 36-inch long pike, approximately. Of course, they're guessing. They don't have a tape measure or whatever. And other people caught fish. One person has 20 pounds that they caught at one time. He had something in his gill net, then he had these lines out, and he brought in things. So he brought in, actually, what did they say? I think they said 10,000 calories worth of fish. And one of the guys said with his fish that he saw too many people on Alone losing their food after they preserved it. So he decided he was just going to eat the food when he got it. So he was going to eat that entire fish. Now, I don't know, I've done some studies, and they're not, it's a little bit confusing, but your body can only consume so much protein at a time. So if you eat more, like that entire big fish, in an hour, some of the material is going to be turned into fat. It won't be like protein because you've hit your maximum. So you're still going to get food value out of it. But if you specifically want protein, it might be smarter to take that fish and eat it over a 12 or 24-hour period. And like I say, if you know more about that, let me know, because it's confusing. But the guy who caught 20 pounds, obviously, he's not going to eat 20 pounds of fish. He's going to have to store that. So just some of the characters, what they did. I have some notes here. Isaiah Tuck, he's age 35. He's from West Virginia. And he's building the shelter. And as he's talking about people spending too much effort building the shelter, he's digging. He brought a shovel. He's digging into the ground to make his shelter. Now, yeah, his shelter's going to be strong, but is he going to have energy left to actually complete it? You know, it's going to be one of these, seems like many people on Alone who overbuild their shelters and, you know, just end up tapping out because they've used up their calories. They were saying that, I think they were saying that he spent 3,500 calories, they estimated, on what he's done so far in the building. And so that's quite a good hunk of calories when you're not getting a lot of food. Now, he did get a squirrel during this. He said, oh, I heard something. He gets his bow and arrow. He gets a squirrel. So he's really, you know, he's happy for that, of course. But a squirrel isn't going to compensate for the shelter. The shelter just seems too big. Now we have Dub, who's a 44-year-old person from Michigan. He sets up a gill net for fishing, and I believe it was him. I say to my wife, it's only like, he made it, and it's only like a foot deep, or a foot and a half, or not even 2 feet. And I say to my wife, he's never going to get anything with that. They'll just swim under it or around it or whatever. And sure enough, the first day he pulls it up, he pulls out this huge fish, this huge pike. So I'm wrong. He was right. So that was funny. My wife caught me on that one. Now, some other interesting things are that the woman, Michaela, I've got to find how she pronounces her name, because that's her name in the show, but I think she's actually picked more of her actual name in the Cree tribe, you know, is something different. But in any regards, there's two women, and this is the woman who's a indigenous person or First Nation person. And, you know, we're in another country, and it's like some things you say in the United States are taken as insults in certain areas, but it's different in certain areas. Like, you can call someone an Eskimo here, and they're happy. And these people over here, if you call them an Eskimo, they're really upset because they want to be identified by their tribe. So, I don't know. It's kind of complicated. But, so, they have a picture of it. She catches up this fish, this decent-sized fish. She just has been eating berries for 5 days. That's about all she can find. And they show her. She's foraging. She's picking these cranberries. She's got quite a few cranberries. Oh, and she found some burdock. You know, the leaves are kind of classic. You kind of, and she knows it's Arctic burdock. And she digs up the roots, and it's like, oh, yeah, my people use these roots, ate these roots. So she eats them. She eats all her cranberries. So she's out there with her fish. And it seems almost like that whiff of the fish, that comes out to her. She gets really sick. And then she starts puking, vomiting, and it's red. It looks like she's hemorrhaging blood. But, of course, it's her cranberries that she ate earlier. Well, unbeknownst to her is, yes, her people used it, but they used it to induce vomiting. They didn't use it for a food source, at least not the roots. I believe burdock, the leaves you can eat. And the standard burdock that would grow here, say in Maine, in a lot of other places, the root you can eat. It's sought after, that sort of things. The only problem is it's fairly narrow, and it can go down literally 5 feet. So you're really going to be digging away. The Japanese grow them in like tubes or boxes. So when they're ready to harvest, they just open it. The dirt falls away, and they've got the root. Makes sense. But so anyway, she ate that, and sure enough, it worked perfectly. As soon as she got that smell of the fish in her, everything came out. But then she felt good again, So once she got her system cleaned out of that, the burdock did its job, and off she goes. So she got this big fish. Now, this is spoiler. I said spoiler before, right? So unfortunately, here we've got one guy. Let's see who it was. I think it was Peter. But, okay. He's doing really well. He's got this food, everything physically is going away well, but his emotions have gone haywire. Now, they refer to this sometimes as, when it initially happens, they're calling it drop shock. In other words, once you realize you're really there alone, and there's bears and it shocks you, and it plays a thing on your mind. Well, the second thing that happens, of course, is you don't have an electronic device to distract you. You're not having all these conversations with people, your family, or whatever you do. You're not going to work. All you have is being alone for 24 hours a day. And so he says, and I'm going to believe him, that he tended to be a person who suppressed his emotions, probably didn't deal with certain things in his life at the time he should have dealt with them, according to him, and just, they all came up. In other words, all of a sudden, all of these things are in front of him all the time, and it was too much. And so he made the decision. So it's like, I think day 5, so he taps out, because he knows his emotions have gone haywire. Now, I was hoping they're showing him getting ready to do it, maybe not. Then he does it. But in the do it not, I was saying, no, wait 24 hours. I would think if you're in a, this is a contest. You're not actually, really surviving in a dangerous situation that you can't get out of. I mean, there is some dangers there. Obviously, there's bear and things like that. But the point is, you've got a button to press and get out of. So I would say, I was hoping he'd say, I absolutely want to press this right now, but I'm going to wait 24 hours. I know there's been some situations in my life sometimes that were kind of a little overwhelming, and I just said to myself, no, I'm not deciding this now. I'm going to wait 24 hours, sleep on it. That's, people sleep on it. And sure enough, the next day, you could see clearer. Or it didn't, some cases, it didn't even bother me at all after that period. It was just a momentary, sitting on your head type thing, where all these things were sitting on your head all at once. And 24 hours later, it's different. So I was hoping he would say to himself that, but he didn't. And he went out, and I think he did what he needed to do. And he's mentioned about his family and stuff, and I do think he'll go back to his family differently. And I think he realizes that some of these things that he hasn't dealt with, he has to deal with. I think he said that. But hopefully going forward, I think he always also said that he doesn't want to be a person who stuffs emotion, but one who deals with it. So it was a very good show. I enjoyed this one. I was really surprised about how many fish they were pulling up. So, you know, like I say, some of them, it was like day 5 or so, and like the woman I mentioned, the other woman, I don't think they had her on the show that much. She was on the episode 2 a lot, but these people, most of them all got a decent amount of food in that episode, and so it was good. It was enjoyable to watch them get things in harvest, because, you know, to me, and, you know, there was I don't know if it affects the ratings at all, but at one point, people were kind of like, this is boring. We're watching people starve again. You know, if it basically gets down to just people sitting there with nothing to eat and hoping they can outweigh the other people that have nothing to eat, it doesn't seem like much of a contest then. But here we are, day 5. They're getting a lot of food. Hopefully this fishing thing will continue. But, you know, fishing isn't considered the super reliable method for survival. Not saying you shouldn't do it, but there are times when you fish and you catch nothing. The idea of passive fishing, now a lot of places, if I was to go, say I have a fishing license, I got to Lake Sebago, and I set some lines in, I go back to my campsite and come back out and check them, it's probably going to be a game warden there with a big, big ticket for me for each one of those lines that were unattended. You just can't do that in Maine. You can't have these unattended lines. Now, in a survival situation, you can. And most places, I'm sure a gill net would be illegal in Maine. I can't imagine it would be legal somewhere, but maybe for certain, maybe you could use them with smelts, I don't know. But you don't need to, because just a dip net, you can get all the smelts you want when they're running, or the alewives too. This idea of the gill net is out there, and it's working for you while you're not working. You're doing something else. So I think it's very important to have passive methods. Snare traps are passive methods too. You set them once, you go away, they're still active. Where when you're actually hunting, and in this case with their bows and arrows, you have to be actively engaged in it all the time. It's going to take you time. You can go out hunting, you're going to take 2 hours. I mean, if that's how long you take, but you know what I'm saying. You can't go in the middle of that and decide to do something else. You've got to be out there and attentive to what you're going, and it's going to take that amount of time. So it's really nice to have something passive that is attempting to catch fish for you, or the snares that are going to catch swirls. One person caught a rabbit. You'll see the lead-in clip to this had a artificially intelligence created rabbit walking across a log in the forest. So that's in the title credits. But you know, those are going to be working for you even if you aren't there. And you do have to set a sufficient number of them. I'll never forget, this was Ray Merz, I don't know if he was in Sweden or whatever, but some places they have these camps, these cabins that are basically free to use for people that are traveling. And I think in Sweden that you can cross someone's land and you can take what you need to survive while you're doing it. So in other words, if there's a lake, you can fish there. If it's winter and you need to keep warm, you can cut some firewood, you can cut down a tree. You know, obviously this can't get extreme, but you know what I mean. But they have these cabins, and so he decides to put out 5 passive traps. It's winter, so he's ice fishing. He makes these 5 holes, and he says basically, well, we're doing this 5-to-1 because this is how inefficient these traps tend to be, these lines, that we're only going to get 1 fish, even though there's 5 here. And so he split some wood to replace the woods he uses and stuff. He goes back out the next day. Every one of them had a fish. He was like flabbergasted. You could tell when he was pulling up the fish. Like, what? Another one? And that kept happening. And he got, he had 5 fish. But fishing can be very spotty. And one place, I forget where it was, somewhere that Lestrade was, and he was on a horse, that you were required by law to carry a fishing pole with you. So in other words, that area felt that if you were to become lost or stranded somehow, that if you had a fishing set up there, you would probably be able to get enough to sustain you until rescue arrives. So there we go. My thing's beeping at me. Episode 3, Season 11, in 100 or so miles into the Arctic Circle. Tell me what you think. Bye.